So, thank you everyone for joining in for this session on competency 7 and 8. And I'm so happy to already have all the check ins and to see the warmth in the room and to have this lovely, co learning space with all of you. I'll share my slides. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So basically, this is presented by ICF Luxembourg chapter. And this series focuses on refreshing our core competency knowledge. And as all of you might be aware, that there have been some recent updates to the ICF core competency. So we will only be looking at competency 7 and 8 today. And this is a part of a series that I was doing last this year completely, and this is the last into that series. So I did 3 webinars before this covering competency 1 to competency 6 so far. My name is Rashmi Singh. I'm the secretary for the ICF Luxembourg chapter, and I am an ICF PCC credentialed leadership coach. So I mostly work with leaders, but there are also people who are coming from different like career challenges of life coaching challenges sometimes, and I do enjoy working with them as well. Um, I have been working as a mentor coach for last 1 year. And working with coaches on their ICF, ACC, PCC credentialing journey. I am a certified ICF PCC assessor, and I am on my MCC journey, in fact. So, as Oksana was sharing about hers, I'm also on my MCC journey, and I'm expecting to complete that very soon. I do something called systemic coaching and constellation. So, I'm a practitioner of this work. I am a student of this work. So, I also do some constellation facilitation based in Luxembourg in person. And I'm also building a course on that, which will be coming soon. Um, I hold my master's in human resources and my bachelor's in electrical engineering. And then I worked with different organizations in various engineering and then in HR roles. This is my LinkedIn profile, and probably I can paste it in the chat for all of you so that we can be connected. I would love to connect with all of you. So here you go. And okay, so this is going to be a very free flowing session today. Feel free to add in your reflections as I add in mine. And so that we are able to create or co-create a space where all of us can bring our collective learning together. Um, so today we will be focusing on competency 7, which comes under communicating effectively, which is evokes awareness, and competency 8, which comes under cultivating learning and growth, which is facilitates client growth. So as we read the definition of competency 7, evokes awareness. It says facilitates client insight and learning by using tools and techniques such as powerful questioning, silence, metaphor, or analogy. And the first thing that comes as we read this competency is the understanding that it is the client's process. It is a very client-led process. So the coach's role is to facilitate the insight but it is not the coach's role to get insight or learning for the client. So it is the client's responsibility to uh, to have their own, to generate or bring their own insights as the coaching process goes on. And it is the coach's role to hold the process and to facilitate or to invite the client to work on their learning and on their insight, and converting those learnings and insights into growth or actions for themselves. And in terms of generating these insights, the coach's role is to use some of the tools and techniques, and these are some examples that have been given in the definition, but there are many that different coaches use. But some of them are powerful cushioning, silence, metaphor, or analogy. Any reflection here by any of you?
Yes, sorry, I would have one question. Hello, it's Esther. Sorry, I arrived a little bit late. Sorry, I was in a traffic jam.
Right.
I just
Welcome,
wanted to
Esther.
know, thank you, how to, you are providing these different techniques, so questioning, powerful questions, silence, metaphor, and analogies. How about clients that never go to one of these pieces? For example, I'm thinking I have a client that he's never going to use metaphors. How we can try, I don't know if it can be interesting or not, for allow him to discover this new space, this new way to think, I don't know if it's interesting or not to try to invite him to try without forcing, of course. But I don't know. What's your opinion on that? Or a person that, that doesn't want to keep silence. So we want to hold the silence, but the client doesn't feel comfortable with that.
Mhm. Anyone wants to share any reflections on that? Then I can also add.
I may. Uh, but can I ask a question first, Esther? Can
Yes,
I?
please.
When the client doesn't like it, right, or feels uncomfortable about silence and pauses and so on, uh, have you ever asked the client what makes him, her feel uncomfortable, where it comes from, to learn a little bit more about the background of the client, if the client's ready to share that?
I would say that it's mainly he's going to say, no, metaphors or images, metaphors, because sometimes I may say, I don't know, what are you feeling? What's the, what's the form? What it could be, look like, and he says, I don't know, I don't, he doesn't know how to find the words, the images, I don't know, that would may describe. Of course, then I said, well, so just tell me what is coming to you. But I observe that each time he's trying to avoid some type of, or of directions. I'm thinking, I don't know if within the different sessions, maybe he can expand his, you know what I mean? His ways of thinking or feeling or seeing or imagining or listening. I don't know, trying to open other directions. But I don't know.
Quite interesting, because like, what if we might be changing the question or starting with a generic question, how that to you, and invite the client to share, or if to go into detail, it's about meta programming of the client. If the client doesn't like, let's say, align with metaphor, it might be that that's not a client who would visualize things, right? But if we might ask a question like, what can you hear at this moment, or what's clicking?
Mm, mm,
Does it ring the bell? to use a metaphor, but not saying the word metaphor, and using quite different, like entry point into the meta program of the client, and they're like, does it ring a bell? Or like, what does it feel like? So most likely it's not about metaphoric visioning, but it could be about metaphoric feeling, it could be about metaphoric listening, or it can be maybe with the metaphoric thinking. If the client is from, like, I don't know, like credit and debit from banking or something, accountancy, right? And I say, what does it calculate like?
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, I think that sometimes, if I think on, for example, myself at the very beginning, it was very difficult for me to visualize things, and I know that by the time I learned better or I could go farther. So I know that it's not a purpose to have for the client because that's not a purpose for us. But I think that it could be interesting, for him to discover that there is maybe a journey to do, but well, I understand that my position is just to be there and try to maybe invite and allow him to go where he wants to go, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the story.
Thank you. And
I've got
I
a
think,
question, Rashmi.
yeah, go ahead. Yes.
But I've got a question, like where I'd appreciate your view as an assessor rather than a coach or mentor, like from the assessment part, right? When we have the definition, like such as powerful question and silence, metaphor, or analogy, for assessment purposes, when we speak, and later on we will not speak only about ACC, PCC, I'm also looking into the MCC assessment as well, right? Does that mean that we should include all these 4 techniques combined, integrated, or from like assessor's point of view, if a coach in a session demonstrates powerful questioning, silence, that's enough because we have commas and or. Or we should have powerful questioning plus silence plus metaphor and analogy, it's not obligatory. Or we should have like plus analogy as well. Or we have analogy and we don't have the 3 because analogy opposes the 3 previous, So I'm just looking into the definition and questioning myself how it would be from, like assessments perspective.
Yeah. So I think it's a very good question. And from an assessment purpose and from a coaching perspective as well, as Esther was also saying that every client is unique and they bring their unique styles into coaching. So it is very important to understand that from the beginning of the journey, the engagement with the client. So in the foundation session or the initial session, ideally, if the coach can spend more time in just understanding who this client is, what is their background, experience, what works for them, auditory style or visual style, etc., and continue to register that. And maybe because we are all human at the end of it, and we might try a style of, analogy or metaphor, and it doesn't work for the client. And that's completely okay as well. So we will try, but then we will register that as coach that, okay, this is not working for my client. So I will not use it again. I will do something else, or I will continue to note down what my client is using. For example, my client is using nature a lot in their conversation. So I'm just registering that, my client is an outdoor person, enjoys nature. So if I can bring something which is connected with nature, they might resonate when I'm bringing an analogy. So it is not important that the coach demonstrates all of these in one session. It will completely depend on where the client is, who the client is, and what they are bringing. The coach will try to use some of these techniques to evoke awareness. It could also be an experiment in some of the session, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's also completely okay. So the assessor will not say that, okay, the coach has tried and it has not worked, so the coach they don't get, the markers for that. So it's not like that. So it's completely okay because the coach is doing it as per the agenda of the client and, to evoke awareness for the client.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Most welcome. So now when we look at 7.01, this is about getting to know what we were just exploring before, getting to know who the client is. Considers client experience when deciding what might be most useful. So, what technique might be most useful comes from my understanding of who this client is, who the client is. In the foundation session, if you can also get to know what are their life circumstances, who all are there in their family, how do they connect with their relationship, how do they talk about their work, how do they talk about other parts of their life. So it is really, really important to just listen to how the client uses their language, their world. They introduce their world to us, they introduce their values, beliefs and needs, etc., in the beginning of our journey together. So that really helps the coach to decide what to bring as a tool or a technique for the client. The second one is challenges the client as a way to evoke awareness or insight. So now here the word challenges is very important. So sometimes the client is at the boundary, like they're not able to see something that they are holding for themselves, or there are times where they themselves are coming in the way of them. So maybe a question like, what part of this is self-induced or self-inflicted for you, if any? So I'm not leading, or I'm not kind of saying that, that I see that you are self-inducing it, but asking it in a way that, okay, maybe I'm seeing it that way. And if at all it is, I'm wondering if there is any part of it that is self-induced or self-inflicted for you. So asking questions where you see that the client is not able to see something there on the boundary, and the coach is able to notice that, and coach then inquires so that they're able to challenge the client in that moment. Or a question like, what evidence do you have that you are not ready for this promotion? So just challenging them in from a different point of view or perspective can evoke awareness for the client. Sometimes you also notice contradiction. So recently I was coaching a client and it was a journey. So in the journey, in the past session, she mentioned that, it was about her and her daughter. She was saying that, my daughter has grown up and now she's not taking responsibility, and, I'm taking care of everything, financially and all of that. And in the next session, there is this transition that is coming for her, and she's going to move to another city. And now she is feeling very sad because she's going to separate from her daughter. And now she's saying that my daughter is only 25-year-old and I have to leave her. And how will she manage her finances? And, what will happen to our relationship and all of that? So then I kind of uh, reflected that, in the last session, there was this contradiction where you wanted your daughter to take responsibility. You mentioned that she's already 25-year-old and she's not taking her financial responsibility. And now I'm hearing this. So what is coming up for you as I reflect back? So sometimes you see a contradiction in the journey in terms of what the client is also sharing. So you can also present that. So it could be questioning the contradictions. It could be about confronting the limiting beliefs, etc. The third one is asks questions about the client, such as their way of thinking, values, needs, wants, and beliefs. Now, the coach is really curious about this client, and this curiosity starts from the beginning of the journey. So the coach never assumes anything. Like if the client says that, I'm looking for this promotion, the coach will not assume that the client is looking for promotion because they want to, grow in their career, or they want that position, that role that will give them, the next title or money, etc. So no assumption. The coach is curious to understand what does this promotion mean for my client. So they will ask them a direct question to understand whatever they are sharing, whatever is the situation, whatever is the context of coaching, what is really important about this for this client. In a very non-leading, non-authoritative way. So that's the key, as we will discuss all the competencies. So what's important about the situation for you, etc. So remaining curious will give us an understanding of the client's current way of thinking, their values, their needs, wants, and beliefs in the context of the goal that they're coming for. Any reflection on any of these sub-competencies?
No, only to say that sometimes it's quite difficult when listening the client to really set off your radio, your own radio, and to really suspend any kind of thinking or related to your values or your beliefs that sometimes, like spontaneously try to arrive, and it's a kind of fight.
Very
Well, I
true.
don't know if it happens to you, but
Yes, that
for
happens
me, sometimes
all the
it's
time. I think, yeah, it's a work in progress.
yes. I think that we start by the conscience on the incompetence, and then we we go until the
Yes,
conscience at least of the
yes.
competence.
Okay. So 7.04 is asks questions that help the client explore beyond current thinking. Now, this one is really about sometimes the client will see their goal or their situation from just one lens or one point of view. Now, how can we as coaches show them some other point of view as well? Like maybe in that, if it's a quote, a metaphor, then how can we be on the other side, uh, you know, and show them the other side of that case, basically fighting the case from the other side, not literally, but not leading them, but how can we also invite them to see a different perspective or lens for the same challenge? One of the ways could be that if we invite the client to think about whom do you respect a lot in your, uh, you know, for example, I come from the HR background, and if it is about the HR thing, then I can ask them that in your HR field, whom do you respect a lot? And then if you were to imagine this person and having a conversation with them, how would she approach this situation or this presentation, etc.? So maybe inviting them to imagine somebody else whom they feel influenced with, or whom they are connected with, or whom they see as a source of inspiration, and think from their shoes, how will they respond to this challenge, situation, or circumstance? So that could be one of the ways. And there can be many. If there is anything that is coming up for you, please feel free to share. Uh, 7.05 is invites the client to share more about their experience in the moment. And this is one of my favorites, because when that happens, that there is something that I'm noticing in the client, I feel that I get really curious to ask them, what is happening in this moment as share this with me. So some of the examples could be that, what are you feeling as you talk about this, or what's happening in your body as you describe the situation to me. So because I also do a lot of systemic constellation, uh, our focus there is to understand somatically what is happening in the body of the client. And sometimes our cognitive brain does not give us so much information as our body or somatic senses give us. So it's a really beautiful source of intelligence and information that the client can access, or the coach can invite the client to access in that moment. Or sometimes when they're sharing something and I'm noticing that their voice tonality is changing completely in that moment. So, you sounded very excited as you shared option three. I'm curious what's happening inside of you right now as you share that. So, listening, voice tonality, change in voice tonality, energy, all of these could be captured, and the coach can invite the client to share their experience in that moment. 7.06 is about notices what is working to enhance client progress. Now, I think this is also connected with what Esther was asking before, that some approaches will work for our clients and some will not work. Some clients will appreciate silence and some will not appreciate silence. Some will appreciate analogy and some will not. Some will appreciate, metaphors and some will not. So, as the role as a coach is to continue to make notes about who this client is, what do they appreciate, and hence what can I bring. And of course, I will also experiment in the process, and it's okay for me because I'm also human that it might not work for my client, but it is always done in the service of the client and to evoke awareness for the client. And then I register that it's not working, so I bring something else. So I continue to kind of experiment as well, because until we experiment, we don't know. And the client also doesn't know. So we continue to experiment, but we also continue to register, who this client is, what is working for them, what are they bringing, and hence what will be a more suitable approach for this client to bring. So, so yeah, as I was sharing, like maybe if they're using nature a lot, then I kind of say that, okay, what will feel like a sunny day for you here in this context or something like that. So I bring a metaphor from nature or whatever they are talking more about. Hmm. Any reflections on this slide?
Yeah, just what you are saying. Sometimes what I have done is some coaching sessions in the nature, while walking, in the forest or something like this, and I think that it can be very inspiring because at some way, even though if the person it's not specifically very sensitive to the nature, as we are surrounded by the nature and we have and the colors and the sounds and the smells, it's going to go to all the different elements, I would say. I think that it's maybe easier, to bring them to express, to use, to feel, than when sometimes maybe I have done a session just in a desk, Even though if we can play with what is on the desk, but at least I think you are more involved, I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And I have also personally experienced it, and it really, really works very well. I've also heard from coaches that in order to prepare for their sessions, some of them also find it very resourceful to go out and spend some time in nature so that they feel more grounded and present for their sessions as well.
If I may, I'd like also, like to comment on that. Taking us um, most likely to walk and to follow the coaching, because we may understand that being in nature, with nature, by the side of the lake or whatever, can be really nice. It can ground. It can assist. All right, it's about being resourceful because nature, even if we do not admit it, it charges us with energy, consciously, unconsciously. So that's another part, right? Beyond this discussion. But what does the coachee want? Because it can be resourceful, but what if the coachee does not need to reflect and to go into something which is the mission or presence or being or values? What about a different thing that this coachee is much too much into yoga, meditation, reflection, staying all days out in nature, taking walks, no, like around Luxembourg and everywhere, but falling behind deadlines with performance indicators and everything. Because being result oriented, it's not about this, because this person might be more about loving, giving, appreciating, respecting, building teams, but not being very specific about something which is needed at some specific moment of the coach's life. And who knows? We may have even 3, 4 sessions in the nature, but maybe this specific session for this coachee should be exactly at the desk. And to ground, not in the nature, but to ground specifically at the desk with the calendar, with the notepad, I don't know, like with Apple or like Teams calendar, and to start planning together with the coachee if coachee asked for that. No? And that will be also grounding, but it's different sort of grounding.
Very beautiful reflection. Yes, absolutely. It's what, came up for me as you were sharing it, is that anything has to be balanced. Like, over of anything can be challenging. So, what works for this
Yeah.
client at this point of time, and what is their agenda will
Oh,
decide.
thank you. At this point of time, that could be, yeah, this is my takeaway today. At a point of time, because something that can work for the client all the time is good. We know from 7.1 and 7.2. So we know lifestyle, we know way of thinking, we know like behaviors, experience, and everything. But sometimes it is something different that the client may decide that they need for themselves. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So 7.07 is adjusts the coaching approach in response to the client's need. Now, this is exactly what we were discussing, and as Oksana was sharing, that what this client needs at this point of time. So adjusting our style as per that. So, some of the examples could be that sometimes when the client will come in the session, you will observe their voice tonality or body language or energy is very different compared to the earlier session. So you might ask them, that how were your last 2 weeks, that from the time that we met? Or is there anything that you need to set aside to feel completely present for our session today? So on those, check-ins, you will get a sense or vibe of your client in that session where they are. Sometimes they want to cover a lot of things. Sometimes they just want to focus on one thing and go really deep. Sometimes they want more silence. And sometimes they're not looking for silence. They have a lot that they want to kind of, share. So you as a coach, we will as a coach have to adjust our approach, maybe our voice modulation or the pace at which we are doing the coaching as per the need of client. So sometimes you will be speaking fast, sometimes you will go a little bit slower because the client needs it in that session. So, and for the same client, it might shift from session to session, or different clients might show up also differently. So it will both be happening. Um, so yeah, I think some of these things, like just checking in with them and understanding what do they need to set aside, or would they like to do a grounding exercise, would that be useful? Or so all of these could be useful to understand just what's the mood of the client, how are they feeling in that session, and hence, decide the course of the session and approach of the session accordingly. 7.08 is helps the client identify factors that influence current and future patterns of behavior, thinking, or emotion. Now I'm clubbing behavior and thinking together and emotion separately. And I'm seeing this as coaching is both doing, focuses on doing and being. Doing is covering all the what aspect of it, the thinking part for the client, like what is the situation, what is the goal, what is the aspiration, what is the realization, what are the next steps. And being is the emotions. So, what emotions are coming up for the client? What's happening inside of the client? What level of peace or what do they want to kind of feel in their body or in term emotionally in that session or as they accomplish their goals? How will, in terms of future, how will they feel when their goal is accomplished? Or this happens or that happens, where will they feel it in their body when that happens, or where, what are the somatic markers right now for them? So current and future patterns of behavior, thinking, or emotions. This is how I am seeing this competency. 7.09 is about invites the client to generate ideas about how they can move forward and what they are willing or able to do. Now, it is the client's agenda that we are working with, and the client is responsible for generating solutions, generating insights. In fact, this generating insight for the client is so important that you will see that in the latest change that has been made in the competencies, in competency 7, when we will come at 7.11, they have changed this word. In 7.11, it used to be shares, observations, insight, and feelings before. Now they have changed that insight to knowledge, saying that it is not the coach's role to bring insight, but insight is always client generated. So the client will generate the insight. The coach will share observation, ideas, knowledge, thoughts, feelings to the client so that the client is able to generate insight. So, inviting the client to generate ideas about how they can move forward and what they are willing or able to do. So, this is again, this is about the client's chosen options. The client chooses what to do next in the session, what to do next about their learning, how they want to take their learning forward. It is about their self commitment towards their goals. No change will come unless they have the self commitment. It is about client self priority. How do they prioritize that goal for themselves, what they want to accomplish? So the work needs to be done by the client, and the client needs to have the willingness to do the work. The coach facilitates the thinking, the action planning with the client in that session. So some of the examples of this could be that, what have you done in the past that has worked for you? So basically, the coach, it's a very thin line between brainstorming, but not leading or sharing or telling the client anything. So you are facilitating kind of brainstorming here, but you are not bringing your own, leading questions there. But you are evoking awareness in the client by facilitating generating of ideas for them. So some of these questions like what have you done in the past that has worked for you, or what would other people do in this situation, or what is the expectation from your organization on this goal. So you are inviting them to generate more ideas, to see it from different perspectives, or bring in more ideas or options for themselves. What can they do in this situation? So they do their thinking. The coach is inviting, the coach is facilitating the thinking process, but the client has to do the thinking, and the client has to do the further reflection. So the coaching process doesn't stop in that session. it's always carried on even between the session. The client will take something and it will be alive in the mind of the client. And if, a new uh, point of reflection comes in the mind of client, they continue to even ponder about that in between the session as well. So, the coach can also ask, what is that one question that you want to kind of continue to ponder upon after our session? So the coaching also continues between the sessions sometimes. So this is how the coach can invite the client to generate ideas in terms of how do they want to move forward and what are they willing to or able to do about it. Sometimes it could also be understanding the one thing from multiple lenses. So for example, the client is planning to transition or move to a new place. If the coach asks that, what kind of impact it will create on your family, uh, so this they can think that, okay, what is going to happen to my spouse, to my children, etc., etc. So they're just enabling the generating of new ideas or way of thinking for the client, and the client is then choosing their options. 7.10 is supports the client in reframing perspective. I think we have been talking about perspectives a lot so far as well. It continues to happen throughout evoking awareness. Reframing of perspective would be that recently in the session that I was also given an example where there was this client and she was talking about her daughter because she is moving. She's seeing that situation as something that has been forced upon her because her husband needs to move and she needs to move along with him. So asking the client that, what about the situation is positive for you? Or what about the situation might be great for you? Invites the client to also reframe their lens with which they're looking at their situation, and also say that, okay, so this is giving me an opportunity to connect with my mom because my mom also stays there. Or this is giving me an opportunity to enable my daughter to become more independent because now she has to stay without me. So she will have to learn all the things how to be. So she came up with four things and she reframed her situation and came up with four positive things that will happen to her because of this change, which she was completely sad and negative about as she started the session. So just inviting the client also to see or reframe their situation. Or sometimes it could also be about what component of this topic, this goal, would you want to focus on that will improve your situation. So if the whole situation seems very a lot overwhelming and negative for the client, it could also be about just narrowing down the focus to see what could be, what could lead to improvement for the client. So just bringing their focus back on something that could be positive for them, that could be useful for them. 711, the number is very interesting. And as I was also sharing earlier, that this is the sub-competency where there has been a change. So shares observation, knowledge, and feelings without attachment that have the potential to create new insights for the client. So the word insight has been replaced with knowledge. And then there were a lot of questions does that mean that the coach can share their knowledge or expertise, etc. And then I was watching a lot of update videos of ICF on this, and then they're saying that of course it is not going to change that way, that you're not going to tell anything, you're not going to advise, but here you can share. Observation remains the same, that it has to be a clean observation. So when you're sharing your observation, it can be without directiveness, without authority, you share. So for example, it seems that as you are sharing about this person, there seems to be some unease in your voice, and I could be completely wrong here, but what's going on for you? So it's a clean observation that whatever I'm observing in what the client is sharing, I'm just bringing it back or presenting it back. And I'm also saying that I might be completely wrong. So I'm holding it very loosely. And I'm not saying that you have to, accept it because I'm saying it. In terms of knowledge, it changed from insight to knowledge. So here the coach can, and here the key important thing is, it is the client's role to generate insight. That is why this change has been made. So the coach can present thoughts, ideas, or knowledge without attachment, taking the permission of the client. So if it is the coach that is bringing something here new, it is not coming from the client, then the coach takes the permission of the client. May I share something with your permission here? And if the client says yes, there is this tool that some of my clients have used in this situation that has worked for them this way. And my invitation to you is, if you would want to try, you can explore this for time management. But it is completely your decision if you would want to use it or not. So whenever the coach is sharing anything that is coming from them, they take the permission of the client and they say that this is the context in which, and if it is serving the agenda of the client, it can only be done in that context and with permission, and then with non-attachment. So it is then the client's decision if they want to take it or not take it, etc. So that is about the ideas, thoughts. And thoughts would also come from whatever the client is sharing. If there is a thought that is coming up for me, this is how it sounds to me, like this. So this is what is coming up for me. Feelings could be that sometimes if you are authentically feeling that, for example, it could be that, if I was in your team, if I was your team member and you said what you shared with me now, I might feel a little scared to share my opinion with you, or I might feel a little shut down as your team member. So this is what I am feeling authentically as the coach, as the client shares, as a leader. If they're sharing something and I'm the team member, I might, feel not very safe in sharing my opinion. So what's going on for you as I share this? Only if it is very authentically felt by the coach in that moment. The coach can also share feeling, because we are all instruments of sensing. So in that moment, if we are sensing something as a feeling, we can also share that back to the client.
May I have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. In determining whether what's been shared or what you want to share has got the potential to create new insights, do you just trust your guts, or do you have any I don't know, indications, any something to look at, because sometimes it happens to me. I feel this, but is it worth sharing? See what I mean? Because you have in the session, you have time, and that's the client's time and your time as well. So, I feel I have a responsibility, of course, in what I'm saying. And so, is there anything else beyond your guts, your intuition, your presence, and everything you've been saying so far?
If it is in the service of evoking awareness for the client in that situation or context they are exploring, that's the matrix with which you decide.
But it's up to me anyway to decide whether it's worth or not. Okay.
Of course, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So always it has to serve the agenda of the client, overall agenda of the coaching session. And here because we are focusing on evoking awareness. So your observation, your sharing of your feeling, your noticing, or even your knowledge, ideas or thoughts that you share, it enables evoking some new awareness for the client. That is what your intention is.
I have a question also. I wanted to ask about this change, introducing the knowledge in this this one. Even though if we take all the precautions that you were announcing, in terms of showing no attachment, if asking for permission and whatever, you don't see a risk that the client is very happy on the fact that you as a coach, you are proposing things, even though if you are not forcing or whatever. And could this not create a kind of dependence of the coachee about all the knowledge he supposes that you have, that you are kindly, openly, and without attachment? You know what I mean? Could it not be a risk? When the coachee knows from the beginning that no content will come from you, he's not going to expect anything. But, I don't know. It's a question. I don't know. What do you feel about that?
So, nowhere in the when they are sharing videos about the updated competency, they're saying that you share your subject matter expertise now because the word knowledge has been added, or you start telling client what to do. Or for example, if I come from HR and I have experience and the topic is from there, I share something from there. It's not really about that. It is about they have changed the word from ideas to knowledge because they want the client from insight to knowledge, because they want the client to generate insight. So the coach is not sharing any insight, but the client is generating, or it's a what is it? It's a generative process in that session. It is everything is same what was there before. It's just that when the client is kind of brainstorming and the client is exploring something, and if there is an idea or thought that the coach has about it, they can share that with the permission. Like for example, that the example of the tool that I shared, that they're exploring time management and there are some tools, and then you share that with their permission, that there are some tools that you can look at that that has worked for some other clients, but you're not saying that it will work for you or you should take it. But
Understand?
these are
Yeah,
some of the options you have that you can look at. So that's kind of an example of an idea. But I think it, on a safer side, we as coaches, we should take that with a lot of precaution and cautionary
I see.
boundary, that we are not leading the client in any which ways. And nowhere I saw that in the videos that they're saying that, that you can share your expertise or tell any idea. So uh, I would personally not bring anything that is coming from my subject matter expertise.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
will only be coming from what I am listening from the client and playing something back from there as a reflection or observation or idea or thought.
Or maybe I'm questioning, would it be possible, maybe thinking on the tool that you are talking about, to tell to the client, if you think that the tool could be interesting for you, would you be interested in searching for several type of tools? I would say more inviting him to do himself the research, instead of providing myself what maybe work for somebody for somebody else that maybe can work for you or not, but putting him in front of the action to maybe make a research, and then afterwards, maybe in the next session, he could tell me what he found or whatever, and maybe then I can complete, and then in a second time say, look, I also have a client that worked with that and it worked for him. It's also complementary to what you found, but at least he was already on action himself. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I think that makes it even more, it will invite the client to do more work on their side, which is always good. They become more independent.
Yeah, I think it's very tricky, try to mainly for, I think that I'm also doing consultancy, you know, so changing the hat in training, consultancy, and coaching, you know, it's a risk, I think, that I may sleep a little bit in more in one way than another. Well, at least I think that can be a precaution for me. For me, maybe it could work for me. Thank
Yeah. But also, you know, like I would like to add here that we must be very, very careful and understand if coaches in this case are not jumping to decisions instead of the coaches. Because coach definitely can aim to invite coachee to explore more, to become more independent. But who is the coach to decide that coachee needs at this specific moment or in the session right now to be this independent? Just being Ukrainian by origin, and now here in Luxembourg, we have a lot of Ukrainian refugees fleeing the war. And when we had some coaching reflections, they were not complete sessions in the pure sense of this coaching session and so on. It was my volunteering, and I was trying to support the people. And they do not speak foreign languages; they speak like 1, 2 languages. That's it. So, and the idea to evoke awareness also that they can start life, that they have all the rights to be happy even if something horrible is happening there, like thousands of kilometers away, right? It was not about the, let's say, bringing them to understanding or pushing them to be more independent when they might ask themselves a question, how to get around in Luxembourg, because they do not know anything about the system, which is bureaucratic. They do not know anything about recognition of diplomas. They do not know what they must do first to start learning a language, or to go and register with Adam because they are unemployed, or to go and get some documents, you know, like for their families and this and that and that. And they are completely lost. They are like, you know, like newborn kittens. And it doesn't mean that they are not independent. It could be that emotionally they are going through too many things in the moment. And while a coach being maybe even invited by a coachee, we also do not know, because now we extrapolate. Now we make hypotheses here in the reflection, right? But even a coachee may ask a coach, like, look, you know what? But in your case, I know that you are this and this and that. What are the tools that you used and so on? So, and for me, it's, you know, like, it's important not to be leading, not to be deciding for the coachee where the session should go. But if there is a need that can be bridged and remedied, and that will lead to the inside, maybe even it's better that you can share, you know, like some knowledge which is publicly available. It's not even your personal knowledge. It can be publicly. Okay, go to Guichet LU. You know, there is such a thing like in Luxembourg, Guichet LU. This is something where you will find all possible, or one can find all possible procedures. What do you think about it? Was that helpful to you? And then, you know, like immediately lock it with the question, so that it will be clear that it's not the coach who decides for the coachee to do this, 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 and this. Yeah, I think that this is like, again, also like following the coachee, only following the coachee, even if we know that they should be independent, even if we know that it can evoke awareness. But yeah, but to see if this is really needed in the moment.
Yeah. You're eventually serving the client in that moment,
Yeah,
their need.
yeah, we are
And I
serving
think
them.
sometimes in these situation, especially in this context, probably you have to have the hat of a mentor as well sometimes, because you're guiding them. You need to guide them also in some situation. They can't figure it out internally, all the solutions, because some of those they need from outside. Some of the information, important information, they will need from outside. Okay, so there is one ACC format question here that we can just see. This is also available on the ICF website. Using metaphors as a coaching tool is most useful in which following situations? What do you think could be the answer here?
I would say number 3. I'm sorry, maybe. You were expecting us to tell something or not?
No, yes,
Sorry.
yes. You were supposed to say yes, yes. So yeah, that's the correct answer. The client is seeking clarity or meaning. That's, the reason why we use metaphor as a coaching tool. This one is a longish one from the credentialing exam format. If you prefer to read it yourself, I'll not read it loudly.
Okay.
You can type into the chat if you, but I haven't numbered it. So you can just mentally say number 1, 2, 3, and 4 for each of the options.
All right. Yeah.
What would be the best and worst?
Yeah. Chat. Chat is here.
Anyone else? Mm, hmm. So the best is option 3. Ask the client if there was a time when they were running a marathon and felt like they couldn't finish, and invite the client to share how they handled that challenge in the race. And the worst is ask the client if they would like to explore their fear of not finishing the book. No, I think the worst is the second one. Remind the client that they have achieved extremely challenging goals in the past and can meet this big goal too, because this is a little bit leading. So that's why it becomes the worst action, the second one. And the best one is the third one here because it's using that metaphor of the marathon here for the client who is talking about that language and understands that world and that language. So that's why it's the best one.
Not so easy than that,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
But why is it leading? Remind the client that they have achieved extremely challenging goals in the past, can meet this goal too. What is leading in this?
It's leading because then the coach is deciding the direction of the session from here rather than keeping it open ended. Because when they are asking them, just think about a situation where you were running this marathon, how would you have experienced this? It's very open ended for the now the client. It's client led. The client chooses where to go next from here when they're facing this, wall and they're not able to move forward. But now, here in this situation, the coach is deciding that the client should reflect on the past challenges that they have overcome and think about that. So it's not leading from a perspective of the question. The question is not phrased in a leading way, but it is not very client led exploration from here. Then the coach is deciding on behalf of the client that which area should the client reflect on now from here. Like, probably you should think about your past challenges that you have overcome and think about those so to feel more inspired now.
But Rashmi, we can remind in a different way. Even if I may go back on the previous example with mother and daughter. So mother's comments, like as a client in the sessions journey, were contradictory. And what a coach might do in a series of these sessions, right? The coach says, "Oh, really? Like, thank you so much for sharing that you feel so loving for your daughter, so caring, and this and that. But isn't that previously you shared that you wanted your daughter to be more independent? She is anyway 25. But this is to remind, but it's not leading."
Yeah, but there, the only difference is that because the client is presenting the situation again, which they presented before in an earlier session. So you're bringing these two together for the client to look at the contradiction in that. But I understand where you're coming from, that it is also kind of reminding
But this is
the
also a
client.
journey.
Yeah.
This is also a journey.
Yes.
And here we have that a coach is working with a client, and we understand that this is a journey. So we understand that this is not the first session. It's not introductory. It's not, So in this case, also, we've got the legend. We've got the legend, and this legend is telling us that they've been working together. And coach knows that this is like a marathon runner, and this, and he's writing a book. They are writing a book, and they've had their like victories and failures. And it is also about 7.2, 7.3 when we reflect and we invite by reminding. We invite the client to reflect on ups and downs in a career.
Yeah, but in the way, if you see, because we are looking at for the worst action here, and so we will have to see all the options here in terms of choosing the worst. And because here there is this word invited or inquired, the client is not mentioned. It is only mentioned that remind the client that they have achieved extremely challenging goals in the past and can meet this big goal too. It just is only mentioned. So if there was an invitation followed
This
by
is a
that,
very
is
ambiguous thing. Sorry for
yeah,
interruption, because
yeah.
I'm a cognitive scientist. I work with the human brain, and I'm a neurolinguist. So this is
Mm.
like exactly this is my subject matter expertise, and this is where we got here. Because reminder it can be perceived differently through a different
Yeah,
lens.
true,
So
true.
yeah, it
It
can be
becomes
like
ambiguous.
remind,
Yeah.
like when
Mm.
mama says, go take your keys, don't forget your bag. This is remind, right? And
Yeah.
then, what about like, do you recall what happened last time when last week you left your keys on the desk and then you went to catch the train? This is also remind,
True.
but
Very
they're
true.
different. Yeah, okay.
Mm. Mm.
But like, why also it's for me A and B. I was looking at A and B. Is it fine for everyone that we draw a little bit more attention to these two things, A and B? The first was the second.
Yes, can I add also something
Uh,
after?
could I finish? Because like I would really appreciate your opinion on what I've observed. Reframing. This is also evoking awareness, when we have negatively minded people, or like when we have like people that are more landed, or like they are more grounded in fear rather than appreciation or confidence or ability to do things, so capacity. It can be about reframing. Ask the client if they would like to explore their fear of not finishing the book. I would say that this is also like skating on thin ice. If the client doesn't want to do that, why the coach would be inviting to focus on something which is negative? If we might challenge that, if we hear that from the client, and try, like to support the client in reframing. So this is like one and two fighting, uh, which is really worse, because like, yeah, one is asking, another is reminding. Because with this fear of not finishing the book is kind of the worst one. But
Um,
asking the client,
yeah, I
it's
think it's
better with
maybe
action. Yeah.
the thing here might be asking versus telling, because the second one is a little ambiguous in terms of the phrasing. So the first one is more asking the client, and the second one could go in the direction of telling if it is seen in that, reminding, and then it is not followed by an invitation, because that is, not very clear here in the
It's not
phrasing of the
clear. Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
So that might be the reason, yeah. Yes, Gail, yes, you wanted to share
Yes,
something.
I wanted to say when we were talking about the worst one, the two, that reminding is not the problem, like linking to the because it's a journey. But the problem here is the second part, which is that he can meet this big goal too. This is putting pressure. This is us coaches putting pressure on him and also deciding on the agenda, because this might have been his old goal. Maybe today he has another agenda, he has another goal, and we have to go with what he wants and not impose and not put pressure. So this is why for me it is the worst. Um, the fear also, I mean, if it could be like not the worst because at some point this could be a question that a coach asks for me. Maybe not now directly, but maybe in the conversation. Let's say if his answer to this best question is something related to fear, and then we see that there is fear again. So this could be a next question for me.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It was this like can meet this it can be felt. It can be felt like it's a little bit, like not a bit, but it can be pressing. But about exploring the fear, maybe it's already with all these like over 4,000 coaching hours. Not thinking that direction, but we have ACC, PCC, MCC, and I got used to my type already. You see how we can get taken backwards, because I would never give this phrase. I would say, so based on this, thanks for sharing that. So what specifically would you like to explore today? What specifically you would put on our plate today? But I will not put this like fear of not finishing the book. But indeed, if we were now looking at the coaches that just start their career or ACC coach, even with credentials, it takes like years to build this, not to use these negative phrases used by coachee. It's as a muscle. It should be trained as well, right? And I miss this because I would never put this fear of not finishing a book into a coaching question, right? But it might be a question. Why not? Why not?
Very useful. Thank you for sharing, Sana.
Thank you. Thank you so
Again.
much. Thank you, everyone.
Mhm.
Thank you so
Esther,
much.
you have something to add?
Sorry, no, I was thinking that this first question for me, it was probably more natural when the client was talking about fear. So when the client is already talking about fear or something, a kind of pulling the thread, what would be or how you would experience this fear of not finishing the book. But of course, as you were saying, maybe for me was pulling the thread on one answer or something that the client is maybe already sharing.
Yes. And I'm conscious of the time. I wanted to cover competency 7 and 8 both together, but because we are already on top of our time, so what I will do is I will plan another session for competency 8 separately. And because we had such an engaging, participation today, I'm very, very grateful for that we were able to add into each other's, learning and way of reflection. So yeah, thank you very much, all of you today.
Thanks
Thank
to
you.
you, and
Thank you, Rashmi.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for all the sharings. It was